Hi, I'm State Representative Bruce Ayers, and thank you for tuning in to my legislative update. As a state representative, I realize how important it is to keep my constituents updated on matters going on Beacon Hill. I produce this show so residents can learn more about state government and voice their input. And to help me with that today, my guest is Auditor Suzanne Bump. Suzanne, thank you for being on the show.
Oh, I'm delighted to be here, Representative. Thanks for having me on.
Well, it's great to have you, and you're certainly no stranger to the city of Quincy. You've got a great working relationship with the delegation, the city officials, and always around to help out with a lot of the charitable events, particularly the Maria DeRouse Fashion Show, which I know you're a big supporter of.
That's right. My husband, I'm not sure that he's still on the board, but was on the board for a number of years. It's a wonderful social services organization. And how can you say no to the Sisters of Maria DeRouse?
That's right. You know, to some of the residents maybe watching at home that don't know you as well as we do, could you share a little bit about your background and what got you interested in public service?
Sure. I as some of your viewers may recall, was the state representative from Braintree back from 1985 until 1993. I had never expected to get involved in elective politics as a candidate. I had been involved in campaigns starting when I was in college, but when my boss, Representative Elizabeth Mateer, was retiring, I decided that I had a set of opinions about how the job should be done, and I was the best person to go out and do the job the way I wanted it to be done. So I did that for 8 years. I'm a lawyer. I've practiced law as an advocate for the business community, big businesses, little businesses. I've also advised nonprofit organizations, including a women's alcohol and drug recovery program in Brockton called Edwina Martin House. Then I got back into government with Governor Deval Patrick. I was the Secretary of Labor and Workforce Development for 3 years, and that was a wonderful opportunity for me to participate in government at a level of implementation rather than making laws as you do. I was in charge of making sure that they were being enforced and that we were properly implementing the programs that the legislature had created. And that's when I really saw the opportunity in the auditor's office to act as an agent for accountability for the taxpayers. I got really focused on how well we were spending our money, particularly in the area of workforce training. It's critically important to our business community that we have an educational and training system that's producing workers to help our economy grow. And that's how it is that I happened to get into the race for state auditor.
Well, you certainly bring a lot to the position. And for some of the residents at home, can you give an idea what the auditor does on a day-to-day basis and what your office looks for?
Sure. As I said, in modern terms, I would be the chief accountability officer for a large business. And so when we do our auditing, people think of auditing in purely financial terms. But the kind of work we do in the auditor's office is not just to add up the columns and the ledger books, but it is to ask state agencies how they spent the money. That is, did they follow the rules when they were spending it? If they were taking in money, because lots of agencies collect fines and fees and the like, were they protecting it against theft or employee embezzlement? When they're spending money, there are rules about how you do it, and likewise for contractors, people that do business with the state on our behalf to provide services. We make sure that they're living up to the terms of their contracts. So that's the typical work of the auditor's office. That's what it's historically done in Massachusetts. But I'm adding another element, and that is really to emphasize the effectiveness and efficiency of state government operations. So we're asking, so not just how much did you spend, how did you spend it, but we're trying to answer the question, and how can we do it better?
Well, that's a great philosophy. I know since you took office in 2010, you've made a lot of positive improvements and have even been recognized nationally with the State Auditors Association, receiving, I think, one of the highest ratings in 2014.
Yes, one of the things that you should do if you are running a government auditing operation is conform to government standards, standards that are set by the Government Accountability Office. And you should have a review of your operations, the quality of your staff, the extent to which you are actually properly investigating and recording and reporting on what you are finding. It's all in the name of ensuring independence and objectivity, and as well as quality work. And so the office hadn't been peer reviewed in a number of years. When I asked them first to come in just after my election, we found that we failed. We weren't meeting government standards. The office was still doing good work, but you just couldn't say it was meeting government standards. So we made a lot of change in our personnel policies and practices, a lot of change in the rules under which we operate, and then a lot of new technology that really helps the staff bring in information from many other data sources and do deeper investigations into agency operations. And so after 3 years, they came back and they said, wow, you've really made some change here. In fact, you've gone from failing to getting the highest possible rating. So that was a significant morale boost to the office, as well as something that I was very proud of.
That's great. It's quite an accomplishment. And now, your office being one of the 6 constitutional offices statewide, I know you interact with a lot of different offices, but what is your relationship with other investigational agencies, such as like the Attorney General's office?
Well, in the case of the Attorney General's office, sometimes, and thankfully not that often when we do an audit, particularly when we're doing an audit that involves not a state agency, but a contractor for a state agency, we will find indications of fraud. Maybe they were billing for services that they never provided, or deliberately overbilling, otherwise abusing the public purse. And so we will refer those to the Attorney General's office for prosecution. We also work with them on our public assistance fraud investigations, because in addition to this audit function, we also have a Bureau of Special Investigations, and we are the chief investigators for the Department of Transitional Assistance, for welfare benefits, so-called, and food stamps, but also for daycare services and the like. And so we will collaborate with them, and also with the federal government, particularly around food stamp fraud. We'll collaborate with them.
Now, how can the public learn more about, say, some of the results of your audits, or how could they help with investigations of fraud if they wanted to call something in or have your office take a look at something that they feel might not be up to par?
Well, we frequently receive and we encourage state employees and members of the public to get in touch with us. They can do so anonymously by calling the office. There is also an 800 number and a website. At our website, you can also provide us with information. The main number for the office is 617-727-6200, and I can't remember off the top of my head what the 800 number is, but our website is mass.gov, that's mass.gov/auditor. And that's how folks can have input. They can provide their own identifying information, or they can do so anonymously. But that's also at the website where you can see every audit that we have conducted. Everything is put up now on the website. We also have every report that we have issued. We issue, those quarterly reports that we send to the members of the legislature about our fraud investigations. We also put those on the website. And there's all kinds of other information about other things that we do in for state government. We have a division of local mandates. We also pass judgment on the administration's proposals to privatize services currently being provided by state employees, that is, contract out. So we have a number of other functions that we're responsible for, and you can find out about those at the website too.
That's great, and we certainly encourage any of the viewers that might be watching they're more than welcome to contact my office, and we can share that information with you however they feel more comfortable. Now, you've given us some examples of different audits. Do you perform audits of cities and towns, and how does that factor into some of the audits that you do?
No, our work is confined to state agencies. We we visit them on a kind of rotating basis. Every several years we'll come in and audit a state agency, except for Mass Health, the state's Medicaid program. We have, because the legislature a number of years ago deemed this program in state government not just to be so important, but also because of the amount of money that is being put into it, an entity that was really need constant oversight. So we are always auditing different aspects of the Mass Health program. But when it comes to cities and towns, we only will audit a city or town or a school district if we are invited in. The law requires that we have a majority vote of the Board of Selectmen or the City Council and the mayor, or if it's a school committee, the regional school district, before we will perform an audit there.
Okay. You know, I know with some of the other improvements that you've made in the auditor's office, you have your office has filed legislation to the House and Senate to, I believe it was an act to enhance the workforce of the state auditor, particularly geared towards business tax expenditures.
Right.
Can you talk a little bit about that piece of legislation and how it will benefit businesses?
Sure. We do our auditing of monies that you have appropriated, expenditures that are made in the state budget. But there's another kind of expenditure, and that is a so-called tax expenditure. And that really just translates into the numerous tax credit, tax deduction, tax incentive programs that we have in state government that the legislature has created over the years to accomplish specific purposes. Sometimes we want to help maintain a mature industry, and so we create a series of tax breaks for that, or we want to encourage a new industry like biotech or green technology. Sometimes we just want to create jobs. We want companies to expand, and there's all kinds of incentives that get put on the books. So that means that revenue is foregone. The state's not collecting the amount of business excise tax that it otherwise would. And so we can audit other agencies. We audit the Department of Transitional Assistance Welfare Program and the Mass Health Program to make sure that they have anti-fraud efforts that are ongoing. So we're not giving benefits to people who don't deserve them, who aren't eligible for them. But we don't have, except for the Department of Revenue, we don't have anybody overseeing the tax programs. And I can't oversee how well the Department of Revenue is doing to fight tax fraud, because I would have to I'd have to get information from tax returns, and I am prohibited under the law from getting that information. I think that because we're talking about $3 billion worth of credits and exemptions and the like, that we deserve to know whether they're achieving their stated purposes. Are we really helping these industries? If they are supposed to forfeit money because they didn't meet the hiring goals that they, for instance, promised that they would meet, and they have to give the money back, well, let's see that the money came back. So it's bringing that same idea of accountability to business tax cuts that we bring to the rest of government spending.
Okay. Well, you know, I base a lot of the topics that we discuss on my legislative update on the phone calls and emails, and you know, a big topic right now has been in the district, and I know throughout the state, the Pacheco law. And I know you've been very much in the issue, and since the law was enacted, there's been many proposals that your office has reviewed towards the Pacheco law. Could you talk a little bit about that and some of your feelings about it?
Sure. Back in the early 90s, when there was a move to start privatizing state services, that is to say, we're not going to have state employees perform these services anymore. We're going to look to the private sector, the theory being that they could do so more efficiently. They could deliver better services at lower costs. Back when that was a prevailing philosophy, the legislature enacted a law that's named for the state Senate sponsor of it, Mark Pacheco, and it said, okay, Governor, administration, we're not going to say you can't privatize, but before you privatize, you've got to do a cost analysis and make sure that you actually know how much it is costing you to deliver the service currently. And we have to know that we actually are going to get a financial benefit if we contract it out, and that we have assurances, given the contract provisions, that we're going to have the same level of service and quality of service. And by the way, you can't cut costs just by paying everybody the minimum wage. You've got to pay a market wage. And so it's that, I see it as another element of accountability. Before you take money, and it still is tax dollars, before you take it away from the state agency to spend directly and give it to a private entity, you've got to make sure that this is going to be in the taxpayer's best interest and in the best interest of the people who are receiving the service that's being provided. So I know that over the years there have been a lot of people who have complained that, oh, well, that just puts the brakes on contracting out. Asks government to go through a lot of hoops. And I won't deny that it does do that, but it's in the interest of accountability and making sure, because the taxpayers are still on the hook, that we're going to get the result that is intended. So we haven't had a lot of privatization proposals in recent years. Over the years, since 1993, there have been, I think, 18 that have been submitted to the auditor's office. Most of them, 15 of them, have been approved, and so they have privatized, for instance, bookstore operations at college campuses, and they have privatized highway maintenance services in various parts of the state. And with our new governor, he wants to do more privatization, and particularly wanted to see privatization of elements of the MBTA's operation. He didn't want to have to go through the Pacheco law analysis, and was able to convince enough members of the legislature to grant him a suspension of that law for a few years, so that he can see if it will speed up a process. I'm not for or against privatization per se, but I do think that there's great value in having this law to ensure that there is accountability, because taxpayers, as I say, are still on the hook, no matter who is paying, who's providing the services, whether it's state employees or private sector employees. The taxpayers still have to pay for it. And let's make sure that we've got good planning behind those decisions.
Sure. Well, I know you oversee roughly 150 agencies and departments, but another big issue that has been in the news an awful lot is the Mass Department of Children and Families. Mm-hmm. Some of the recent tragic case of Bella Bond and some of the abuse and neglect to some of these children. Yeah. I know your office has done some audits in the past. What have you found, and what do you see to help straighten this out?
Well, unfortunately, there is a pattern of findings. So when we have looked at the agency, when last year the Child Welfare League of America came in and looked at the agency because of the disappearance and then ultimate death of that little boy, Jeremiah Oliver, who was under state supervision. What we all see when we look at that agency is not that there's been a rogue employee or someone who has just utterly failed to do their job. What we see is a system with too few social workers to care for the families that come to DCF because they are having difficulties with their children and caring for their children, or there may be allegations of abuse or neglect. So too few social workers to do that job, with inadequate training, because it's not enough to just be trained once in order to qualify for the job. You have to have ongoing training because things change in society, and what are the best methods of helping troubled families. So they need more training. They actually need more supervision. You need to be able to have a chain of command, so that if a case is really just befuddling a social worker, she doesn't really know where to turn, the family seems to have a lot of need, there are lots of different people reporting, maybe school officials as well as family members who are concerned about this, and you're getting opinions and input from a lot of people. You've got to be able to have a hierarchy. You've got to be able to go up higher and higher and help and find the support that you need from your supervisors to make the right decisions. So not enough supervisors, and not enough technology on the job, so good access to electronic records so that everybody can be constantly updated on the situation in the family, so that if it needs another set of eyes looking at it, that person has ready access to the information. But the other thing that they need, in addition to those things that are pretty tangible, is there needs to be a real spirit of collaboration, not just within the organization, because we know that the regional offices feel disconnected from the central office, and that's a common problem, not just for state agencies, but for businesses. The further away you get from central command, the more isolated people feel. Yeah. So it's a perfectly natural phenomenon. But the other thing is that the agency doesn't get a lot of support from its sister agencies, by which I mean when you have a family that comes to DCF, there's typically poverty, or there is substance abuse, there may have been sexual violence or other domestic violence. You have problems with literacy, family literacy, and so lots of agencies outside DCF have the resources to help that family, but according to DCF social workers, they don't get the kind of response from those sister agencies that they need to pull it all together to help families. So that's another important element, is collaboration within and then with other state agencies. It's going to take, unfortunately, some time, years, frankly, before that agency is able to fulfill its mission in the way that we all would like to see. There has to be a lot more hiring. With the early retirement program, a lot of experienced people left. So there's just another element of turmoil as they try to fill those jobs and bring people into those positions. But it's doing a critically important job. And I think we shouldn't be just trying to scapegoat people there, but really understanding that the agency needs a lot of support from the public as well as from the rest of government.
With some of the changes that you've made to your office and some of the issues that you've been deeply involved with, what would be some of your personal goals set for your office over the next 2 or 3 years that you'd like to accomplish?
Well, one of them actually has to do with the Mass Health Program, the Medicaid program. I mean, you vote on that budget. It takes up 1/3 of the $39 billion that the state government spends every year. That is a lot of money. It covers a lot of lives. 1.5 million people in the state get their health care through the Mass Health Program, but we are finding it more and more difficult to sustain the increasing costs of that program. Because of the resources that you and the legislature have given to me and the way that we're using technology, we are able to identify lots of areas where money is being poorly spent, where there aren't good controls over bill paying, for instance. We looked at the managed care organizations within the Mass Health program. About half the Mass Health members are enrolled in managed care programs, and you know how managed care programs work. The managed care program is supposed to be responsible for all of the health services. They're supposed to cover all of the bills, and they get paid by Mass Health to do that. Well, we were finding about $500 million worth of bills that were submitted by providers not to the managed care organization, but directly to Mass Health, that Mass Health should have sent back over to the managed care organization, but they paid themselves. So there are failures in their system to make sure that that they are only paying for services that they should be paying for. I think we can make, that's just one example, but we've made substantial contributions to helping them tighten up their operation, and those I hope will feed into a better managed system that will that will have its growth checked, so its cost growth checked. So we want to see some cost savings, and we think that we can contribute to that.
Great, great. Well, unfortunately, they're telling me my time is just about up. I want to thank you again, Auditor. I know you crisscross all over the state, and your time is very valuable, but appreciate you coming to the studios today to inform some of the constituents in my district and throughout the Commonwealth what's going on in Beacon Hill.
Well, I'm glad to do it. I'm very proud of the work that we are doing, and pleased that we can help make government work better.
Well, thank you for how accessible your office is and your help to my constituents. And if the viewers at home have any questions related to some of the topics that the auditor spoke about, please contact my office or hers. I can be reached at 617-722-2230. And I want to thank you for signing in, and thank Betty Campbell and Mark Crosby and the staff at QATV for helping us with this show. Thanks for watching.